So what's up you guys, it's Johnny here again, and I'm going to start off this video by telling you all a story. So once upon a time there was a young boy living with his two parents and his two brothers. And one day they decided to move. So the young boy asked his mother and father, how much are the house going to sell for? And the parents looked at him and said, we think that we can get about $300,000 for this house. So the boy asked the obvious follow-up question, which was, so how much did you buy it for? And the parents looked at him and said, we bought this house for $30,000. And so far, so good. But here is where the story gets really interesting. So upon hearing this, the boy got really excited and he calculated in his little head that they were going to get $270,000 profit. So he said to them, wow, that means that you're going to get $270,000 worth of profit for this property. And the parents looked at their young boy with a look that they only give to young, naive children that doesn't know anything about the world. And they responded, well, no, that's not how it works, young man. We first have to pay off all the debt and then we have to pay tax on the profit. So the boy thought to himself, tax, yeah, that one he forgot. But what do they mean about loan? Why do they have a debt on a property they bought for 20 years ago for a price of $30,000? They cannot possibly mean that they have some debt left on this, because they were in fact a two-income family household. So they should have been able to pay off that $30,000 debt during the past 20 years, the boy thought. So the boy replied, rather puzzled, but what do you mean about loan? How much loan do you have on the property? And the parents chuckled and said, well boy, we have about $150,000 worth of loan on this house. And that, guys, is going to be the topic of today's video. So this story is not in any way uncommon, and you guessed it, the young boy was me, and the parents that were portrayed in the story were my parents. So we're going to talk about this phenomenon that I just told you about and how it comes that some people do get stuck in this situation. So before we get into the practical parts of why some people end up in this kind of situation, whereas other people do not, we have to get a bigger understanding of how money works and the different types of money. Because you can actually classify money under different categories. And there are basically four types of money. And the first one is income. And to income, there is basically everything that comes into your pocket. That could be from your salary. And the second type of money is your expenses. And the expenses is sort of like what you need to get your life working, like the expenses of your food, your rent, when you buy clothing and stuff like that, all the little expenses that you do from a day-to-day basis. That's the second type of money. And the third type of money is called assets. And there are different sort of views onto what an asset is. And one of the things that a lot of people think of when they think about an asset is they think of their house. That is not the type of asset that we're talking about when we're talking about these kinds of assets. Assets in this context is actually something that earns you more money. That could be something that gives you interest, rent, or some other kind of profit. So that's an asset. Because if you think about your house doesn't generate any money most of the time. And that's why we're not going to classify that as an asset here. So the fourth type of money is liabilities. Liabilities are all kinds of debt and loans that you have to your name. So So that could be like a car loan or a house mortgage or whatever. So those are the things that are classified as a liability. So now that we have categorized 4 types of money, we can actually split that up into 2 different categories. And I'm going to put them up here. So the first category is something that I call fast money, and under that category falls income and expenses. So the second category is long-term money. So the 2 types that falls under that one is, yes, you guessed it, assets and liabilities. So with this setup, we can visualize how a normal person's financial situation looks like. So for most of the people, I would say like 99% of people, they do not have this kind of setup. So for most people, the fast category money does look something similar to this. The top block with their income matches the lower bottom block with their expenses. So they get approximately as much income as they have expenses. And if we look at the other part there, the assets and liability column, they are way off as to a normal person's financial situation. So the average Joe, they do not have a lot of assets. Some of them I think they do because they own their house or whatever. That is not actually an asset, as I explained earlier, because that doesn't make you any money. It sort of just costs you money. So most of the people have this looking staple to their right. They have a small, if none, looking assets category. And then they have a huge chunk of liability with different, like all sorts of loans, such as car loan or house mortgage or whatever. So this is sort of like what the average Joe economy looks like. So now that we have established what a normal looking economy, if you call it so, looks like, we're gonna see what normally happens with a person's financial situation as they progress in life and they start making more and more money. So what you think happens when you get a pay increase or your income goes up is that you're going to have more money. But what is actually normally happen is that when your income increases, so does your expenses. And also not just the expenses, but also your liabilities, because that means that you can get a bigger loan, you can get a bigger house, you can get a new car, and so on and so on. So even though your income do increase throughout the year, that doesn't necessarily mean that your financial status or your economy, so to speak, gets better. So how do we solve this, and what does a wealthy person's economic situation look like according to this kind of visualization? Well, first of all, as you guessed, a lot of rich people also earn a lot of money from their day-to-day job if they have some high position. So their income part will be actually quite large. And just like to clarify, all people that earn a lot of money does not have a healthy economical mindset that we're going to show you now. But anyway, so they normally have a bigger chunk of income, and then what you want to do here to have the ideal economy is that you want to shrink your expenses part. You want to have this kind of relationship on your fast money category. So the second thing you need to do is look at your second category, which is long-term money. You want to have a large part of assets and a small part of liabilities. And this is sort of a semi-truth, because you can actually use liabilities or loans as a leverage to earn more money. But more on that on another video. But for now, think of that. You have to maximize your assets and minimize your liabilities. So why do you do that? Well, because your assets are putting money into your income file. So you will get money from your assets, which means that your income would be even bigger. So how does this connect with the story that I told you in the start about my parents? Well, what happened to my parents was throughout the years they were building up their liability diagram here, brick after brick after brick. And what the liability part does to this diagram is, just as the asset part gives you money, the liability takes money from you, because you have to pay interest on your liabilities. So that was the thing that happened to them. They kept just increasing their liability part of this, and they didn't put any money in the asset part. So that ended up with them having loads of debt to their names. Instead of having an asset, they could pay the money every month. So just to sum up, I'm going to show you here how your ideal economy should look like. So you should have a large asset chunk that pays you money every month or every year or whatever, that pays you money to your income. You should strive to have a large portion of income and a small portion of expenses, as well as, for all intents and purposes now, a low chunk of liabilities. So that is sort of the ideal economy that you should strive for. So most of these ideas actually come from a book that is written by Robert Kiyosaki, and the book is called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So if you find these kind of things interesting, I highly recommend that you read that book, because he sort of goes into a bigger depth into how these things work. These diagrams that I showed you now aren't like spot on what he's teaching. I sort of alter them a bit to fit more my point of view. But if you like this video, I highly recommend that you read his book. And I'm of course not affiliated with it or anyway, I just like reading books, and that one is one that I really like. So until next time, see you guys.